Banks borrowing from the Central Bank of Nigeria increased by 174%. Estimated cost of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years pulled at $1.6 trillion. Asia slips into a holiday low. U.S. data set to shine. Plus, European shares rally as investors begin May in bullish mood. Business Express takes a look at NMPC's price regime and revenue generation amid economic recovery. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar, your guide. Now, let's bring you up to speed with business development. A clear reflection of the intense scarcity of funds that prevail in the interbank money market in April, banks borrowing from the Central Bank of Nigeria rose by 174% to 2.48 trillion naira from 904.6 billion naira in March. Findings in the CBN data release show that while banks borrowing through the SLF rose sharply by 174% in April, their deposits with the Apex Bank through the SDF fell by 57% to 169.74 billion naira in April from 392.37 billion naira in March. The increased borrowing from CBN by banks was driven by the intensity liquidity squeeze that prevailed in the interbank money market in April. The scarcity of funds was caused by huge outflows compared to inflows into the market during the month. Away from dependence on oil, the present administration has placed priority on non-oil exports and diversification of the economy. But the COVID-19 pandemic has posed challenges to export as well as other aspects of the economy. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed, in an exclusive interview with Business Express on the state of exports in the country, says in spite of the challenges, federal government is committed to enhancing funding intervention to boost productivity and exports.
Nigeria is a country that is still largely dependent on export of crude oil. So the effort we're trying to put in, and also as committed in the national plan and Mr. President's directives, is to diversify to other export areas. We are increasing gradually. We now have a wider opportunity by the taking effect of the AFCFTA. So we have an opportunity to export more within the African region and generate more foreign exchange for the country, alternative to the oil.
The African Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, in partnership with other development organizations, have pledged to work closely with African leaders to address rising hunger on the continent and shore up adequate financing to transform and modernize Africa's food production. This is in response to the impact of climate change, rising fragility, conflict and locust invasions in East and Southern Africa taking toll on the continent. Justin Bemuyi reports.
The African Development Bank and the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development hosted the event in partnership with the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa and the CGIAR System Organization. 17 African heads of state signed on the commitment to boost agricultural production by doubling current productivity levels through the scaling up of agro-technologies that will include investing in access to markets and promoting agricultural research and development. Of the overall amount pledged, more than $10 billion came from the African Development Bank, which said it would invest $1.57 billion on scaling up 10 selected priority commodities over the next 5 years to help countries achieve self-sufficiency. Another $8.83 billion will go towards building strong value chains for these commodities over the next 5 years, and this will include programs to create opportunities for young people, particularly women. Relatively, IFAD said it aimed to provide an additional $1.5 billion to support national efforts to transform food and agricultural systems in Africa over the next 3 years.
When we said with the SDG, nobody should be left behind, this is what we want to implement in the case of feeding Africa on one of your five high. And I want to really insist that the partnership is where we are.
One thing, Anne-Marie, that for us, myself and Gilbert, we're going away with that is really critical, is the call for the establishment of the financing facility for food security and nutrition in Africa, to help to scale up efforts, to scale up technologies and interventions to achieve food and nutritional security.
Justin Bemunyi.
Meanwhile, development partners on the final day of the two-day high-level dialogue have pledged over $17 billion to address rising hunger on the African continent and to improve food security.
Your Excellencies, we need your strong political leadership to turn Africa into an agricultural powerhouse. We have the technologies. We have the technology delivery platform to do it. We now need better policy incentives. We need greater access to financing to support agricultural research and transformation. And we need to develop special agro-industrial processing zones to add value to food produce.
The United Republic of Tanzania is organizing an interactive event with the banner Tanzania-Nigeria Tourism Investment and Trade Forum. The High Commissioner to Nigeria, Benson Alfred-Bana, says the event is pursuant to Tanzania's economic diplomacy strategy, which seeks to promote stronger bilateral relations between the two countries. Charles Alpha reports.
Nigeria and Tanzania's tourist, investment and trade presents huge markets to the African continent and the world. And realizing their full potentials requires that the two countries find out what works for their economies and the country's survival in challenging times. In search of the way forward, the United Republic of Tanzania is hosting prominent African leaders and business gurus in a forum on the 4th and 6th of next month in Abuja and Lagos. Tanzania High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Benson Bana, says the forum is expected to increase the number of tourists from Nigeria to Tanzania while also creating larger markets for Tanzanian products in Nigeria.
The forum is expected to increase the number of major Nigerian business companies with investments in Tanzania from the current 5 to about 8 by December 2022.
The High Commissioner said the Tanzania-Nigeria visa policy, which stipulates 3 months earlier application to Nigeria seeking to do business with Tanzania, is currently being reviewed for easy trading.
Our people, government, have been working tirelessly to look into the possibility of also revising the Tanzanian visa policy.
8 organizations from state and non-state stakeholders in investment, tourism and trade sectors from Tanzania and Nigeria are expected to make presentations at the forum in Abuja. Charles Alpha.
Now oil dropped towards $66 a barrel Monday as concern about demand in India and higher OPEC Plus supply offset optimism over a strong demand rebound in countries including the United States and China. India on Monday reported more than 300,000 new coronavirus cases for 12th straight day. The new wave of the virus has already led to a drop in fuel sales in the world's third largest consumer in April. Brent crude fell 35 cents to $66.41 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate dropped 27 cents to $63.31. Brent has rallied almost 30% this year, recovering from last year's historic lows thanks to record supply cuts by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, known as OPEC+. The gold rises as U.S. dollar Treasury yields retreats. Let's take a look at other commodities. Now to begin the conversation on NMPC's price regime and revenue generation amid economic recovery, I have joining me in the studio an energy expert, Olabode Showumi. You are welcome to Business Express.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's begin with crude oil. We've seen crude oil extend gains in during the weekend and after closing at a 6-week high with signs of strengthening demand in key markets. What does that mean for the Nigerian economy?
Well, in simple terms, it means that our income, at least the income from crude oil, which typifies 70% of our foreign exchange earnings, is increasing. Now, whether that turns into economic gains in terms of stability in the economy, forex parity and all that is a totally different ballgame. That's between the CBN and Ministry of Finance and those institutions in respect to how they manage the earnings. But it is expected, which is common logic, that once there is an increase in earnings, one way or the other is supposed to reduce budget deficits and is supposed to help with the stability of the forex. But whether that becomes a reality is a different ballgame.
Okay, in March last year there was this talk about ending costly fuel subsidies, and in September it was announced that government was no longer fixing pump price, and since that there has been fluctuations. Can you tell us what issues are at play and likely impact on the economy?
I think the greatest issue at play is the opaque nature with which the subsidy is being handled. In other words, the fundamentals and the details on how the subsidy is calculated and all that is not available to people. So today, if they tell us that there's no subsidy, we just have to take their word for it. And if they tell us that there is subsidy, we have to take their word for it. We should understand that the concept of subsidy is a basic, very basic economic issue. So basically, it takes X naira to produce a product or to a service, but it is being delivered at X minus some amount of money. So that gap, meaning that the loss which should have been accrued, is what government is supplementing. Now, if we cannot calculate how much the product is, how are we able to actually calculate how much the subsidy is? And because this is something that affects the whole of us, it ought to be more transparent than it currently is. So, and it's not exactly rocket science to calculate. So the price of crude oil is a global price. The price of refining is a global price. The price of transportation to where these things are refined is a global price. The price with which we distribute it in the last mile to the people on the street is also something we determine. So I mean, there will be a few other issues where that comes in there, but basically it's not rocket science. So what we owe ourselves and what we need to demand from government is to make available all the parameters for determining these prices, and that has two significant advantages. If genuinely, you understand, government is hitting itself, wounding itself, shooting itself in the feet by virtue of the subsidy, it becomes easier, especially for educated people, to make governance easy by understanding with government And if indeed there are some people helping themselves to the cookie jar, then we can now be able to point fingers at those places, remove the bleeding, so that the economy can be on good standing. So, but overall, it is important that there is greater transparency in how the subsidy is being calculated and managed.
Okay, the NMPC MD says something about price floating, which with no control that could actually affect consumer. What is the true picture of things?
It is true that for most sectors, you cannot leave prices to capitalist greed. Because this has been proven all over the world. But however, because basically if you leave it to the capitalist,
when there are more players and there's competition, it drives the price down.
Yes, but it's not that simple. There must be a critical amount of players that will drive the prices down. You understand? So, but the issue is that, are they willing to allow that amount of players? Will it help the security of the country? There are a lot of dynamics that are involved. But irrespective of whatever the dynamics are, the key issue is that government needs to explain to people why they are doing what they are doing. In other words, if the reason why it's not an all-comers affair is something because of security, is because of the integrity of the supply chain, or because of the viability of the sector itself, government owes it to people. The NMPC must communicate. No matter how technical issues are, there are ways that they can be explained in a way that the man on the street, the market woman, can understand it. And until they do that, they will be governing in opaque nature, they will be winking in the dark, and governance will be difficult for them, which ought not to be. Because at the end of the day, the governed and the governed need to synthesize for governance to be easy. Everybody has one goal, and that goal is a better and more prosperous Nigeria. How to go about it is where we may differ, and that is where communication needs to happen between government and the people that they are governing. And these details need to just come up, otherwise there will be rumors. Because in the absence, it's a journalism maxim, in the absence of news, rumors persist.
Okay, there's this label making suggestion that adoption of production costs pricing method, where the price of petrol will be based on the cost of domestic crude production, refining in the domestic market. What's your take on that?
Well, it's too early to do that, because basically you are just changing from an external monopoly to a domestic monopoly. Were it the case that you had 5-6 refineries, then you can talk about that. But when you are going to have one monopoly, one refinery effectively producing, that's a monopoly. You are basically saying that we should trust the initiative of a capitalist who has invested his money to tell us the truth in terms of how much he generally costs the production of the refining. What logic is there? The man has not sworn to the Quran or the Bible that he must tell you the truth. He is interested in protecting his shareholders, and that is the basic principle of capitalism. Before they do things like that, they have to have 5, 6, 7 refineries working effectively, maybe 2 or 3 of them being government as well. That way, there's a balance of play of the forces of demand and supply. Up until now, this is not proper governance, if they do that.
Okay, how would the consumer know whether he's getting a fair price?
Well, the consumer also owes himself a responsibility to be aware. Because knowledge, there's a part of it that is knowledge-based. Fortunately, we're in the internet age, so a lot of information is available internationally. You may not get all the information, but you get enough information to ask questions. There are refineries all over the world. If you Google refineries in India, refineries in Brazil, refineries in Europe, refineries in the US, even refineries in South Africa, and find out what it costs. You can even send them an email. How much does it cost, to produce this kind of things? And with the information you have, you can be able to ask questions. there isn't going to be significant differences in the cost of refinery between US and UK and Europe and South Africa and Brazil. So if everybody is between $90 per barrel, $210, and ours is 150, then there must be a reason why ours is 150. So some people owe some explanation. So these are basics.
In your view, what happens to FAC contribution?
FAC contribution is not a technical issue, it's a commercial issue. You understand? So that would be for the economists and the financial people who are handling the financial models to say what happened. What we can say is that if there is an increase in crude oil prices and an increase in production, it means increase in income. What is done with that increase in income is a totally different issue.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Olabode Shomi, energy expert.
Thank you, sir.
Now moving on, equities market reversed 2 months losses, record 2.02% gains in April. Boside Abel is standing by for more on the month ended.
NGX all-share index and market capitalization for week ended 30th April appreciated by 1.36% to close the week at 39,834.42 and 20.8 trillion naira. All other indices finished higher, with the exception of NSE-CG, NSE Banking, NSE Afri Bank Value, NSE Afri Divield, NSE Mary Value, NSE Consumer Goods, NSE Growth Index, and NSE Sovereign Bond Index, which depreciated, while the NSE SM Index closed flat. At a turnover of 1.4 billion shares worth 10.8 billion naira in 19,614 deals were traded by investors on the floor of the exchange. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 970.5 million shares valued at 6.7 billion naira traded in 10,876 deals. The conglomerate industry followed with 234.9 million shares. The third place was the consumer goods industry with a turnover of 61.6 million shares worth 974.2 million naira in 2,818 deals. The top three equities were FBN Holdings, Transnational Corporation of Nigeria PLC, and Access Bank. They jointly accounted for 603.9 million shares worth 2.9 billion naira in 3,618 deals. A total of 60,447 units of exchange traded products valued at 1 million naira were traded in 20 deals, as well as 44,354 units of federal government bonds valued at 4.3 million naira were traded in 19 deals. Summary of price changes saw 36 equities appreciated in price during the week, 41 equities depreciated in price, while 85 equities remained unchanged. Bosede Abel, Business Express.
The European shares rally as investors begin the first trading day of May in bullish mood. Global market update is next with Ineka Oko.
We begin from Asia, where China and Japan closed for public holidays. Market volumes were thin and stocks got off to a slow start, with most markets slipping into the red. In Europe, stocks rose on Monday morning on the first trading day of the month as the UK observes public holiday. The DAX rose 0.21%, while London's FTSE gained 0.12% and CAC 40 of France 0.06%. The buoyant start to the trading day in Europe follows a similarly positive trend in US, where stock futures moved higher in overnight trading. Dow futures rose 171 points, S&P 500 futures gained 0.4%, and Nasdaq 100 futures added 0.1%. And back home in Africa, most markets traded in a negative territory, except for Tunisia's Tunidex, which climbed 0.23%, while Ghana's GSE Composite was marginal. Nneka Oko, Business Express.
Now let's see how Naira is exchanging for other currencies. That wraps up this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us by sending in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now, and the hashtag is BizX. Business Express returns Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Be safe out there. I am Musa Abubakar. Stay safe.